Welcome to the FUMS Now podcast show, where you'll gain information, inspiration, and motivation for living your best life with multiple sclerosis. Find us online at FUMSnow.com. Now, here's your host, Kathy Reagan Young. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me again. If you want to reach me for any reason, you can find me at Kathy with a K, K-A-T-H-Y, at FUMSnow.com, or on Facebook at FUMSnow, or on Twitter at FUMSnow. See the trend? Oh, and also hop over to the website and sign up for the free newsletter. You'll get information dropped right into your email inbox about all the latest MS news, research, breakthroughs, and we'll let you know when we post a new podcast episode as well. Sign up at FUMSnow.com/get the scoop. We're talking about medical marijuana today, or should I say medical cannabis, which is the more preferred term. In the more than 20 years since my guest, Teri Heede, was diagnosed with MS, she's been prescribed countless medications but found no relief from her MS pain. With encouragement from her doctor, she began cannabis therapy and today is out of pain and feeling like herself again. Now she's a cannabis activist and advocate, helping to bring safe cannabis to us all. Did I mention her FUMS attitude? Hers is a great story. Let's meet her. Hey, Teri, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Aloha, or as we say in Hawaii, aloha kakahiaka. Good morning. Nice. It's my morning. It's your afternoon.
Yes, it is. That's awesome. Well, thank you. Aloha to you. So let's get into it. When were you diagnosed with MS? What led to your diagnosis?
This was almost 30 years ago. It's like flabbergasting when you think about it. But I went to work one morning, just like everybody else does. You know, I stopped off at my favorite coffee shop, picked up my bagel with cream cheese, and headed on into the office. And as soon as I got there, I went to sit down in my chair and somehow ended up kind of falling on top of it. And I hit it tailbone first. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've broken my tailbone. That's how bad it hurt. Oh, no. And just for a few seconds there, I couldn't really move. And since I worked in a government office, was surrounded by people. Next thing you know, I'm loaded up in an ambulance and taken to the emergency room.
Oh gosh.
And I was able to move at that time, but I was telling them, get me off my back. It really hurt.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I thought. And so it was just a traumatic injury and months of what they thought was a orthomuscular problem that I, had fallen down. I'd hurt my back. Mm-hmm. Obviously I had already cracked my tailbone once and had arthritis in it. So they were like going, okay, the x-rays, and this grayish, whitish area along the spinal column. Maybe it's blood, maybe you busted a blood vessel when you fell. Mm. And it was like just about 3 months of this kind of diagnosis. And I still was having mobility issues. I really couldn't walk that well. And so they put me in, of all things, they started me, of course, on just a regimen of pharmaceuticals.
Sure.
And they put me in hot water therapy.
Oh, gosh.
Now, if anyone knows anything about, and of course, everybody knows here about MS, what it is. And back in the olden days, even older than me, they used to diagnose people by putting them in hot water, dunking them in there. And when a symptom came up like blindness or a mobility issue, they would say, aha, you have MS, and then they would take you out of the hot water. Now, that did not mean, as we all know, I have relapsing, remitting MS.
Oh, okay.
And as we all know, when you have a relapse, you do not always return to that level of fitness that you had prior to the relapse.
True.
So I was there diligently doing my drug regimen, going to my hot water therapy 3 times a week.
Oh,
and then all of a sudden I picked up a can. I kid you not. And, all kinds of nasty things happened, the body tingling, all these, just almost paralysis. And then when I got up the next morning, I had vision problems. And so at this point, somebody decided, and I was going through a series of workers' comp doctors, so there's appointments and why I'm out of work and why aren't you better yet and blah, 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 blah. And so here, I am with a vision problem now and I'm blind as a bat. Anyway, you looked at my lenses. Lucky this is not a visual for people. They're going to be, they'll, when they meet me in person, they'll be really happy about that. But my glasses are like Coke bottle thick. I don't see very well. And so when I woke up and I had vision problems, that had my full and complete attention. I was like, wait a minute. I've put up with all these other things, but this is a no-go.
Right.
And also, unfortunately, I was a widow of an active duty by this time. He died 34 years old.
Oh, gosh.
So here I am now creeping up on 34 years old, a widow with 2 kids, and I'm having all these problems. So finally, a neurologist, I think her name was Gretchen Jacobson. She was a very good, I guess, what do you call those clinicians?
Clinician?
Yeah, because when I came into her office, she said, wait a minute. And she looked at the x-rays and she looked around and she goes, this is consistent with multiple sclerosis. And at 34 years old, a widow with 2 kids, to tell me that you have multiple sclerosis, we are talking about the river of denial.
Right.
I leapt into it immediately. And I was like, oh, no.
Not me.
I can't handle one more thing, especially something as catastrophic as this.
Right.
So I was not, exactly, loving this relationship already with this.
Right.
So, and at that time, the only thing I could have other than this was a spinal tap. And I'm going to tell you something. If my life depends on a spinal tap, I'm going to die. Because it ended up being very traumatic. I have a lot of bone spurs on my spinal column, and they kept hitting them when they tried to go in and get the spinal fluid. And it was just really awful. But that test came back, and it said that 99.9% of people who return with these values on this test have multiple sclerosis. And at that point, you cannot be in denial any longer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, oh, great. This is wonderful. But I can barely walk. I can't walk. I haven't walked in months. So I went in to see another neurologist that I saw on a military base because I am a disabled vet. My husband died on active duty. So I take advantage of the medical system within there. So a lot of people don't even have the care. You wonder why I've lived for 30 years. For one thing, I do get decent medical care. They try their best.
Good.
They really give it their best shot. However, when I was diagnosed, and still there are some disease modification drugs. I've tried them. Interferons, I've tried them. I've done that. But at that time, they weren't available. And when I went in, and I was desperate because they're saying now, okay, at this point, the workers' comp people are going, you know what? This is a terrible diagnosis. We don't think you're ever coming back to work. We're sorry, chickadee, but and I'm like going, wait, I'm 34. I can't give up just yet. You understand? 2 kids. Remember the 2 kids.
Right.
So I'm like going, no, there's got to be something else I can do. And I went in and I sat down with him and he goes, well, have you tried a chiropractor? And I'm going like, look, and I shut my medical record and I said, I've researched this. And there are people like me, and they use, marijuana. Now we say cannabis.
Right.
I don't care what you call it. You can call it pot like I did in the 60s. It's just fine. But I said, there are people that are telling me that this actually freaking works for them. And at this point, what do I have? What am I going to do? A chiropractor. I already, I had trashed my stomach with pharmaceuticals by this time, anti-inflammatories that ate the stomach lining away. I could not get on my feet. I needed on my feet. And he put his hands on top of mine and he said, I interned at a hospital in Minnesota. I am telling you, with MS patients that were around, you got nothing to lose. Give it your best shot. Yeah. And what I did was I started smoking like a burning haystack because I went back to my experience in the 60s, and that's how you got it in.
Yeah.
There were no edibles, there were no oils, there were no tinctures, there were nothing that we have available now in the pharmacopoeia of ways to get medication in. That wasn't available. And I went back to the tried and true methodology, of just smoking. Now, smoking does something, it gives you an immediate relief.
Oh, okay.
I mean, That is when you, for some people that need absolute immediate relief. I mean, and if you can smoke, or vaporize is also a good way without doing so much damage. But if you need immediate relief, you will get some.
That's the way to go.
Because that's the way to go. Because what they're finding out now is that we have an endocannabinoid system built in with THC receptors that are built into our bodies. And they immediately respond. Those receptors just say, hello, how are you? And as you know, with MS is like, I tell people, think of electrical cabling cords around your house. And what happens in my body is the outside covering, the coating, is called the myelin sheath, and my body attacks that, and it strips that coating off, creating the lesions. And we call it multiple sclerosis, going back to multiple lesions,
right,
along spinal column, brain. I mean, so it strips that coating off and just attacks it. So I will pick up my coffee cup, and I'm thinking, yay, I'm going to get my coffee, which I must have in the morning, or I will die. We've got to get that caffeine in.
Right.
And oh my God, I will drop the cup. I'm positive I had a hold of it. Well, I've had a misfire. That's what's happened. And what I think happened was by saturating those THC receptors, and this is all anecdotal from my personal experience, it opened up another pathway so that I could get that signal somewhere into that signal that I want to hold that coffee cup. I want to try to get it. I think it actually helped rebuild some pathways for me.
Wow.
And to get that signal across, because I started having immediate effect.
Oh.
I was able to get up on my feet. I was able to walk. I walked in 6 weeks after doing this. I walked into my office on a cane. I limped in. Okay. I didn't walk in.
Right.
We know this.
Wow. But
I limped in.
The effects were immediate. They were that quick.
They were that quick. Wow. I got immediate feedback from that system, and it said, okay, so you have totally blown out this, but somehow it was able to reach around and deliver that response that I needed on those nerves.
Yeah, interesting.
It worked.
Excellent. That bottom line, it worked, right?
It worked, and yes, I've been to 4 different countries at least, and talked to many, many people. And I am not going to tell you, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that this is going to work for 100% of the people 100% of the time. Because that's just not how life works.
Right.
But at this point, we even have people, I work with a doctor here in Hawaii, and I work with, his name is Dr. Dave Barton, and he is an absolute believer in juicing.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses it like an herbal supplement.
Interesting.
And it ranges from the what they call psychoactive leaf to juice that, even to juicing the flower or the bud.
Oh, so you're saying he actually juices the cannabis leaf, the marijuana leaf. Oh, okay. Wow.
Using it like an herbal supplement. Oh, yeah. Using it. Because smoking it may not treat the disease, only the symptoms.
Wow. Okay. This is a little mind-blowing. I had never heard of juicing it before. That's really interesting.
Think of it like an herbal supplement, a powerful, therapeutic, with therapeutic levels of cannabinoids that can even help you achieve better ingestion. Because I totally trashed my stomach with pharmaceuticals. My stomach lining will not regrow adequately. Every 3 days, I think people's stomach lining regrows, right? Mine never comes back just right. But so for especially his patients, he says that they're even able to remove some damaged cells from their bodies, that they have a raw cannabis improves, the efficiency of the cells that are actually in your body.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
That is amazing.
And remember that before we poo-poo it, because I'm like, I don't particularly like the taste of cannabis, so I'm like, but just think about how people said years ago, and I would go to testify and they would say, it's cured my cancer. And I'd go, please don't say that. People won't think you crazy.
Right. Yeah.
They go, and now we have scientific evidence that proves that they can help destroy cancer cells
Yeah.
and destroy cancer cells.
Wow.
Empirical evidence, science, people. Yeah.
Science rocks.
Yeah.
um, so your story, I think I know the answer to this, but your story was featured in the book Cannabis Saved My Life, Stories of Hope and Healing by Elizabeth Limbach. Do you really feel like it saved your life?
Well, think about the consequences if I hadn't done what I did and walked in 6 weeks later. They would have retired. I was already a widow with 2 kids. Okay. Now, I would have been retired from my job, and I was a GS-12 at the time. That's fairly good salary. I was a computer programmer, engineer, systems analyst. I could hit all those, and I would have been retired from my job, unable to work in a high cost of living area like California is just like Hawaii, very expensive to live there. Right now, you need like $30 an hour to survive
Wow.
in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And it was the equivalent back then in California where I was living. So, I mean, it would have been just absolutely, I would have been moving to where Mississippi,
Sure.
someplace a low cost of living, but would they have the medical? Then I need to move close to a military base so I could still take advantage of my medical. It would have been life-changing and devastating. My kids would have had to leave school instead of my son graduating from his high school and getting the John Philip Sousa Award for playing in Cuba. Things like that. My daughter had a medical issue that required extensive, I needed to be right where I was for her to be taken care of. And oh my God, if they had retired me out, my life would have been, it would just have been a nightmare.
Right. So it really did save your life, it sounds like.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
didn't, it
That's
got
not
me
a
up on my
stretch.
feet. It got me working. I was a productive citizen again. I had major accomplishments in my work life after that. And it was just like, I could pay them taxes.
Yeah,
Government
right.
ought to love that, because instead of being a drain on society and having to go on disability and having to, I could pay taxes.
Right. It kept you moving, kept you walking, kept you working.
Exactly.
Got it. Well, I know that studies have been limited because it's listed as Schedule 1 drug, right?
That's correct.
But are there studies out there that have actually shown improvement in MS patients?
The best studies are in Israel,
Mm,
because they have actually been allowed to legally dispense it to patients, collect data, because that's what we need is
right.
data collection. It's all about the science. If you want to be, every time I go in to testify, and these guys think that, oh man, this is just an excuse for you to, get out
Mhm.
there and, let's smoke
Right.
one. Let's have it pass it this way, pass it to the left hand side. No, this is not a Cheech and Chong moment. These are patients. I don't even get high like that. It's like, and I'm not partying all the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah,
I wish, that this was like, my life was just a party all the time. But
right.
no, it's a get on your feet, keep thinking, keep walking, keep talking, keep swallowing, keep seeing.
Right. It's a
It's not
medical
about it.
therapy.
This isn't. Yeah. And you know what? If I do not understand, especially when you give, as we age, geriatric patients, we are the worst. You can't even give us antibiotics anymore that we won't hallucinate.
Mm.
When they start giving you IV antibiotics in the hospital, oh my goodness. My father-in-law had a beer with Obama, and he was a Republican. It was good. They had a good conversation.
Oh,
But,
that's
so
great.
that's how delicate, as geriatric patients, as we become kapuna here in Hawaii, our old people are called kapuna,
Mm.
and seniors, we need more herbal remedies, less things that are going to count. The chemical effects on our bodies are amplified. I don't know how many times,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
this is a much more viable and edible, an oil, a topical cream.
Oh my
These
gosh.
are all things that work. Now we're having a hella hard time here in Hawaii getting those in. We have 8 legal dispensaries in the state. They have been open, and most of them have been open for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And because of the state legislature, that's why I end up over there for the past 20 years. It's disgusting to have to make sick people go over there. So I go over there, though, because they passed the most compassionate use law in the country back when I think Ben Cayetano was governor. And then all of a sudden, they said, yeah, it's fine. You guys go ahead and use it, but we don't know where you're going to get it.
Yeah.
We don't know where you're going to get it. And I am a firm believer in having your own garden at home. It's helpful, especially if you're accessing it for raw, for juicing or as a raw product for eating, whatever. That's very helpful to be able to control. You want to be sure to control no pesticides, no herbicides, no sides.
Right.
Okay. This is the one time you don't want to order sides. With your
hold
meal.
the sides.
Hold the sides. So they're going to do that. And so you need to have a home garden, to be careful about that.
Mm-hmm.
But they have restricted us to like 10 plants. Well, if you're a juicer, you need like 30 plants all the time because they'll be in various stages of growth. They're never going to get, to the, probably to the full size if they're using just the leaf.
Mm-hmm.
So it depends on what they're juicing, how they're juicing. They're not taking any of this into account from a legislative point of view because all they're thinking about is about the regulation, how to regulate. And we thought that once they took it out of and I could do a whole show on what they did. They took it out of the Department of Safety because for a while our legal medical program was with the Department of Safety. Mm-hmm. And what got me started on this whole advocacy bit was because I get a letter in the mail. Some paper in Hilo asked, how many patients do you have? Registered patients. They sent them the whole entire database with my name, address, where I grow, all this information. Forget HIPAA regulations. If you're a pot smoker, you don't have any, they don't count for you. And I know people that their grows were ripped off afterwards. I don't know how. I asked them because I was an old computer person. Can I just come over to where you had this on the drive? Can I look at your drive? Can I just see to make sure it's gone just for the hell of it? Right. It's paper. And they freaked out, but they wouldn't let me look. So I don't know, that got me started. I started going down there. I said, well, you outed me now. So that's why I've always given patients a place to come hide behind me if you have to, because I understand what it's like. I was flying beneath the radar and was very comfortable there. Mm-hmm. But when you get outed like that, I know how, that's just like, wow, how could you do that?
No choice.
I was in total compliance with the law. Total compliance.
Wow, that's quite a story.
And so they moved it to Department of Health. So I was really hopeful that the dispensaries under the Department of Health, because if there was, ever a real argument for legalization, this is quoting a Republican, Sam Sloan, if there was ever a good argument for legalization in the state of Hawaii, it's the mismanagement of the Department of Public Safety. Okay. So when they moved it to Department of Health, I was really hopeful, but they have turned into a gigantic regulatory agency. That's all their main concern is. They really aren't concerned about those products I was talking about. Mm-hmm. They squashed edibles in the dispensaries. You can't have anything except hemp derived CBD products in the dispensary. Something I wouldn't give my dog.
Wow.
You need a whole plant extract for a good CBD product because the components inside have an entourage effect. That's what I keep telling them. THC is not a bad thing. It opens the natural receptors that are there. There's no CBD receptors that I know of. Mm-hmm. There's THC receptors. So you need to open them a little bit and then flood it with its CBD. I think that works, ideally. Mm-hmm. So you want some THC inside that CBD. Mm-hmm. You can totally counteract those psychoactive Cheech and Chong moments by making sure that THC level is never higher than the CBD level, because it's mathematics, it's science. They cancel each other out.
Wow, that is so interesting. I really appreciate you going through the explanation there. That's really interesting.
Well, because people, especially that are treated for MS and older people, Asians in my community, do not like the idea that they would get high.
Yeah. Well, that
It's
was going to be one of my questions too, was, do you necessarily get high when you do this? And again, I'm quite confident now in hearing you explain it that um, I would say it's probably based on how you ingest it, right?
right. And I don't get high, I get well. I
Yeah.
get just enough to get well. And that is what the difference is. This is not going to be a Cheech and Chong moment for me. I'm not going to have one of those. I think it'd be cool. It might be fun, but it's just not going to happen. I'm just
Right.
going to be able to get up. I'm going to able to walk. I'm going to be able to see. I'm going to be able to be cognitively more aware. I'm going to,
Right.
it's just going to make me well. And they have to stop thinking that this is what happens. That's why some people, I believe in microdosing. Don't do like I do. Okay. I have been doing this for almost 30 years, and I actually the kids nowadays get a hold of concentrate. They get us things called rosin, and
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things that are very concentrated.
Concentrated.
Shatter, I think they call it. And it's absolutely a very heavy duty, it's a concentrate. And I want them to be careful with that, because you really, if you're going for this as for a medicinal dose,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, you just want to microdose. You want to find out how little does it take to make me well.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to end up having to have, massive doses. I know people I know this is going to sound crazy, but there are people that now cannot use cannabis as a therapy because they've somehow either they already have a sensitivity to it, or they have created a sensitivity to it, maybe with massive doses of, concentrates.
Oh,
But it makes them sick. They
wow.
actually can, and sick, I mean, vomiting,
Right.
gastrointestinal disturbances. And I'll tell them how to find out if you've made yourself sick, if you've done too much. And they can do this with edibles. That's why people have to be careful with edibles. Be very careful. And that's why I'd rather people get packaged doses,
Mm-hmm.
not just cook it up in my kitchen.
Right.
I'd like to know exactly. And I'm going to tell you, one of the best technologies that's helped me has been Steep Hill, Hawaii. They're a testing facility here in Hawaii.
Hmm.
And one of the things that was pushed through a year ago is that patients can take their product in from the garden and have it tested.
Wow.
So they can test and make sure there's no sides, that you're
Right.
just getting your plate lunch, no sides.
Right.
And you're going to make sure that you have an idea of what is in there.
Mm-hmm.
And they will even, I believe, now I think I've only had them test flour for me, but they will test concentrates as well, because I work with patients, like pediatric epileptic patients. They need, what we do is we actually cook up our own medicine. We concentrate it down in a rice cooker and make medicine and make this oil so these kids can be dosed,
Oh my
through a
gosh.
feeding tube, or, maybe just a drop on the tongue or whatever. And we have to do that ourselves right now,
Mm.
because the legislature here won't allow the proper amount of dosages. They want to say, I may need 100 milligrams in this one syringe, and they want to put it down to 10 milligrams per dose. Well, you can't make a kid take 10 capsules.
Right. That's
You know what I mean? You
yes.
can't. So we need to create. So as parents, these parents are so desperate, and we could go in about I think it's Dravet's, right? And some of these other, just unrelenting, horrible seizures that these children have, hundreds a day, that we have given them a dose of this, and it has stopped.
It's amazing. That is
It's a
really amazing.
miracle.
It
It's
is.
a miracle. And I don't understand how good people cannot want these children to get relief.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, Teri, let's get to the legalities involved. Right now, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, 8 states and DC allow recreational sales, and another 22 states allow only some form of medical marijuana, and 15 allow like a lesser medical marijuana extract. What in the world? That is so confusing. Can you break it down and And how do we learn what's allowed in our states?
Okay, what you can do, it's easy to go Google it, but there's actually the cannabisindustry.org. That's one big word, the
Okay.
cannabisindustry.org has a state by state marijuana policy. And you need to be really careful, especially people that are trying to travel with their medicine. That can be a dangerous proposition in some states. You'll
Mm,
end up with a federal penalty.
wow.
We are trying to change the laws here in Hawaii, excuse me, so that people can bring in their medications, or better yet, go to a dispensary here and just pick it up. If you
Mm,
are a bona fide medical patient in another state, that's called reciprocity.
mm, okay.
So our state does not have reciprocity. Most states don't. The ones that are trying to get it going, are kind of on the West Coast. It's like the West Coast seems to be changing.
Mm,
So the domino effect is happening out here first.
mhm,
And while that decreases the cost per gram of medicine, it also increases it because the states that are taking advantage of this are very smart, and they see that with recreational use, they can make a buck. You can't really do that with sick people, but
mhm,
boy, with recreational use, that can really change. And I am hoping that it changes for the better. In Washington state, it didn't work out that way. They
mm,
promised medical advocates that they would not make changes that would really harm patients, and it turned out to be pretty brutal. And then so we have to be careful, because I have a tendency at this point, though, with the attorney general and the administration we have in place, to think that legalization is probably our best bet.
mm,
If we really want peace for patients, we just might as well legalize and get this
mm,
over with.
mm. Very interesting. Um, so you just mentioned something about it being expensive for recreational use, and that brings up a good question. Is cannabis expensive?
It varies from the black market right now in Hawaii is cheaper than the dispensary. The dispensary will be at least twice the cost
Wow.
of what is on the black market. See, that drives people back to the black market. They
Right.
need to lower those costs so that they're available recreationally, but also medicinally, because there are no insurance programs, Medicaid, Medicare. They'll pay
Mm,
$2,000 a month for
mm,
me to be on interferon that almost killed my liver. I stopped taking it after my liver almost died with interferon. And I was just like, oh, they will pay for that. That doesn't work and it damages my body, but they won't pay for this.
mm,
So that's another thing we need to work on. Once we get this done, we need to start working on uh, getting insurance companies to pay for it. I think that's the next. That's why we got to have legalization, is
right.
because if I want my insurance companies to pay for it, we're going to have to legalize.
Absolutely. So if someone with MS is interested in giving cannabis a try, how do they go about it? I mean, should they ask their doctor? What's the process?
Yeah, it would depend. Right now, VA doctors, you can discuss it with them, because, like I told you, I was a disabled vet,
Right.
and I made them start putting in my medical record my improvements.
Hmm.
And go ahead and gather this empirical evidence, because they really, doctors by and large, want to help. They want to
Right.
help people. This is another tool in their toolkit. They'll take
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
If they can get somebody off an antipsychotic that's being treated with PTSD, they give them antipsychotics. You'll notice what happened when they started doing that. Those people came home, started shooting up their places of employment, shooting their families, doing crazy things. You shouldn't give a person with PTSD an antipsychotic.
Mm,
Okay, that doesn't work. But you treat them with cannabis, and suddenly it's a much more manageable disease.
mhm,
It's much more, it does something there. We've got a problem here when
mhm.
they won't accept what's right in front of their face. And so VA doctors now are starting to accept this, because a lot of veterans are going in and going, this is
Sure.
exactly what's happening. And instead of me taking this pink pill, I mean, at some point, these poor vets they were shopping around because they would do things like, oh, my pink pill is not working, but your red pill is. Let me try your red pill. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah.
like, no, you can't treat some of these things with a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And so the cannabis, well, you can get it in pill form. So you can treat it with an oil. You can treat it, you don't have to smoke it. You don't have to vape it. You can eat it. You can rub it on as a topical. But we need more empirical evidence.
Mm-hmm.
I think Zeldas, I believe, is one of the places where people have actually started a database of ailments, and they will come and I'll say, okay, I'm MS and I have IBS. And so, they're trying to collect what are your symptoms, what strains work. And as we get more into, remember I told you about Steve Hill, and they're really excellent because they classify things by terpenes and limones and other, the components that actually, we call it, Maui Wowie or something. Well, that's a street name. That can be a street name, and it can vary. This is more scientific. And as they do that, I think they will stop calling it Maui Wowie, and they will list it by the amount of terpenes and other components that are actually in it. So yay for Steve Hill, Hawaii, to put a little science to our problem.
Yeah. And then be able to document what strains work for what issues, right?
And we need people to collect that evidence. Right now, we're just getting the testing done, and the patients are collecting this data. I need the Department of Health to be more interested.
Gotcha. Teri, thanks so much for helping us better understand cannabis use in MS. I really appreciate it. If people have questions or want to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
They can find me. I've got together a patient's HUI. It's at HI, capital HIP, kind of like we're hip, but it's HI for Hawaii, patients, PATIENTS, right, HUI. And that's on Facebook, Twitter. And Teri Heede, I'm on Facebook also. You can message me. I'll be happy to talk to you. And we're trying to get a website up. It's under ladyflock.wix site. That's WIXSITE.com, HPRH for Hawaii Patients Right, HUI. So we're trying to get out there and get our patients organized, because that's what it's going to take, people. I want everybody to get out and register to vote. I want them to get out and participate. Let's let them know that, no, we're not just stoners. We're not just, and we are sick people, and we do have rights, and we want to be heard, and we want to be well.
Perfect. I ask this of all MSers that come on this show. Are there any resources you'd like to share for products or apps or software or whatever that you found particularly helpful in your MS journey?
I think that one of the best things is my browser, that I can use adaptive technology to make the print bigger on my screen.
Perfect.
Which is really helpful.
That is helpful.
So, and again, I want to go back to testing your medications. For patients out there that do have their own garden, find your own Steve Hill, Hawaii. Find your own place to test. Make sure that you don't have any sides.
Right.
Along with your main course.
Perfect. That's good advice. So here in the FUMS Nation, we speak to this stupid disease as it deserves to be spoken to. Please join me in saluting MS with your middle finger extended, of course. On 3. Ready? 1, 2, 3. FUMS. Perfect. Thanks, Teri. Really appreciate it.
Aloha. I look forward to talking to you later.
Thanks for listening, everybody. If you found value in this podcast, I invite you to go into iTunes, search for FUMS Now, and leave me a 5-star review. Not only does that motivate me to create more free content, it also helps others just like you to find this valuable resource. Be sure to sign up for our free newsletter for more tips and tricks for living your best life with MS at FUMSnow.com. And if you have suggestions of future topics or guests for the show, please email me directly at Kathy, Kathy, at FUMSnow.com. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time, remember to speak to this stupid disease like it deserves. Tell it FUMS every day.